What is up, Algebra 1 students? This is lesson 12, and our objective for today is how can you use properties of real numbers to simplify expressions. So this right here in red are some different properties of real numbers, most of which you probably have known and used for a long time, but we're just going to put some names with those properties that you've already been using. So notice over here is a property name, like the identity property, and there's one for multiplication, and also one of addition. So the first one says identity property of multiplication says that if you take any number a and you multiply it by 1, you're going to get back to that same number. So think about 5 times 1 is still 5. And the identity property of addition says if you say a plus 0, you get back to that same number. This next one here is the commutative property. Well, I guess a good way to remember the identity property is think about what your identity is. That's just you, who you are. So if you start with you, you're going to end with you. Start with you, you're going to end with you. So it's kind of a good way to remember the identity property. The commutative property, think about the commute to work that maybe your parents do, or your commute to school in the morning. Like whenever I come to work, I pass the QT, and then I pass the Fiesta Mart, and then I arrive at school. But as I'm headed home, I'm going to pass the Fiesta Mart and then the QT. So notice it's the exact same things, but in the opposite order. So A times B, if we're talking about the commutative property of multiplication, A times B is the same thing as B times A. So notice it's the same thing, but in the opposite order, right? QT, Fiesta Mart, QT. And same idea here, the commutative property of addition. It's going to be A plus B is the same thing as B plus A. Or think of 1 plus 2 is the same thing as 2 plus 1. We're just using letters to represent that. And then the last kind of property is the associative property. The associative property, think about who you hang out with, who you associate with. So this first one says, the associative property of multiplication says A times B times C is the same thing as A times B times C. So notice it's still the same numbers, but it's just who's hanging out. A and B are hanging out here, B and C are hanging out. So B has chosen to associate with someone else first. Same idea, associative property of addition, A plus B plus C is the same thing as A plus B plus C. So again, B has just chosen a different person to associate with. Alright, so this is like example 1, and we're supposed to identify the property used. So this one here says 10 plus 5 is equal to 5 plus 10. So as we look through up here, oh look, that's this one right here, A plus B, same thing as B plus A. So we're going to say the commutative property of addition. Alright, looking here at part B, it says 1 times 2 times 3 is equal to 1 times 2 times 3. Well, that looks pretty familiar. That's right up here. Notice the 2 was associating with 1, now it's associating with 3. Over here, 2 is associating with 3. So that's the associative property of multiplication because we're dealing with multiplication here. Alright, looking here at C, it says 45 times 1 is equal to 45. Well, notice it started with 45 and ended with 45. It's kind of like, hey, it's its own identity, and that's exactly what that is. It's the identity property of multiplication because we're dealing with multiplication there. And last but not least on this page, it says 4 plus 3 is equal to 4 plus 3 plus 3. So notice here it was a 4 and a 3 hanging out. Over here it's a 3 and a 3 hanging out. So who they are associating with, who this 3 is associating with, has changed, which is going to be the associative property of addition because we have addition going on in here. Alright. And then this next one says use properties to justify each step as you simplify. So what we're going to try to simplify these expressions and then name the property that we're using to do that. So first of all, I think I'm just going to switch the order because I want to add that 15 and that 7. So I'm just going to switch the order. So I'm going to have 4x plus 15 plus 7. So what has changed? Well, notice here we had 15 plus 4x, and now we have 4x plus 15. So that's going to be what we call the commutative property of addition. Next, we're going to want to add those two numbers together. So it's just going to be 4x plus 22. And here you just say, that's not necessarily a property, so just say add 15 and 7. And that is as simplified as that one goes. So then let's move down here to number B. We have 30 times x times 1 over 30. Well, I'm kind of wanting to do that same thing that I did up here. I'm going to multiply that 30 and that 1 over 30 first. So I'm going to reorder that. I'm going to say x times 30 times 1 over 30. Now this would be, again, what we call the commutative property of multiplication this time, because we're just changing the order of those two. Okay, now that I have commuted those, if you want to say that, I've switched those around. I'm going to multiply these two. So I'm going to end up with x times, well, it's 30 over 30, which is just 1. So I'm just going to say multiply 30 and 1 over 30. And then what is x times 1? Well, that's just x, and that's because of the identity property of multiplication. And that pretty much sums up what this lesson is about. Pretty much doing the same thing that you already have been doing, except you're adding this component over here. We're just naming what property. So if you want to include that table of properties in your quick reference notes, that'd probably be a good place for it, and I please ask you to do that. I'll be looking forward in your next binder check. Your homework for tonight starts on page 66. You're going to do all of them from lesson 12, all of them from lesson 11, and then 7 more of your choice. Good luck, and I will answer more questions in class if you have them. I will see you later.